Welcome back, friends. Well, that didn't take long, clearly, as I'm still sitting in the same place wearing the same t-shirt as episode one. As per the teaser, um, let me just really stretch way back and recount that as a child, as a small kid, my favorite thing to do was to play superhero with my friends. Uh, at the time, we would pretend to be Spider-Man by, wrapping our little toys up with strings, toys that were heavy enough to throw over rails and pretend we were climbing up our spider webs. Um, I would pretend to be able to fly. Not that I jumped off anything dangerous, but I would pretend to have, superpowers like Superman. Um, and of course, uh, one of my favorite things to do was to spin like the original Wonder Woman and burst into my superhero persona. Sometimes I still do that, I must admit. um, that was basically something that I always felt connected to, the ability to have abilities that went far beyond um, what my ordinary life uh, showed me I was capable of. So that's sort of puzzle piece number one. The other thing that I used to do when I was a kid, and maybe not so much of a kid either, was to uh, stare at an object and intend it to move with the power of my mind. Now, I am confident that for some of you who are watching or listening to this, uh, this is something you have also done. You may not have told anyone about it, but I can assure you that you're not alone. I spent uh, many an hour, or at least it seems, trying to move objects with my mind when I was a kid. So I offer that because I think what's valuable about that experience as a child or as a young kid is that I inherently knew that there was something more to what I was capable of experiencing than just what my five senses were telling me that I could do. Okay, that's step one. Um, then, as I started to get a little bit older and entered my teenage years, I started to recognize experiences that we would most commonly call coincidences. You think of somebody and then they happen to call a few minutes later, or you think of somebody and you run into them on the street. And at the time, I used to call them coincidences because that was the most common phrase we used for that kind of thing. But it became clear that I certainly wasn't the only one having this kind of experience. And I knew that there was something else going on. I knew there was some, I don't want to use the term magic because that has a whole other um, realm of experience attached to it, um, which is worth exploring on its own in a different time, perhaps in a different episode. But let me describe what I was feeling as a knowledge that there was a lot more going on than I could imagine. And something had to be happening to bring these experiences together so that they became uh, meaningful when they crossed paths. Uh, I think it was Carl Jung, don't quote me on this, who described that kind of experience as a synchronicity. Any Jungians out there can correct me if I'm wrong, and I apologize in advance, but I'm pretty sure that was it. Um, and so as I started paying attention or recognizing that these experiences were happening, it also became clear that they seemed to multiply. That is to say, the more I recognized that window of experience, the more experiences like that occurred, or at least the more I started to notice them. And by now, I was already feeling enchanted with life. And I already felt on some level that just by being alive, I was privy to something much greater than just my own being. Um, and as the years continued, um, and I started to, uh, you know, look to books for inspiration, um, I became really fascinated with anybody who was writing about um, spirituality, um, consciousness, and the dimension of our humanity that, as I said before, is invisible but reveals itself through our human experience. Now, fast forwarding a little bit um, into my early 20s. No, I'm not in my early 20s anymore. In my early 20s, a friend gave me a book. I think it was called God and the New Physics. Now, uh, it was a small book, I believe, but what it did was discuss how um, our physical material world was much more complex and interconnected than we perceive it as being through what our eyes tell us. Let me try to describe that a little bit more clearly. When we look around, um, I'm looking around right now at this room, and there's a table and there's a lamp, and there are various objects and a plant on the desk. There's a mirror on the wall. Um, there's my body. But what quantum physics, now referred to as the new science, um, was beginning to tell us back then when I was at least discovering it, uh, probably now in the early 90s, was that uh, the deeper we go into exploring the physical dimension of life, the more it becomes clear that any sense we have of separation between objects disappears. And this fascinated me because the implication, which now is proof, um, is that at a very fundamental level, we are all one. And not only that, but um, life, let's call it that, life, because that's really what it is. Life at the level of the subatomic, which is the realm that quantum physics explores, um, does not behave according to uh, the laws that we as macro objects think in. Um, and I won't go down that road of providing examples here because I'm not a quantum physicist, and I don't want to mislead or misinform. But there are so many incredibly written books by quantum physicists and scholars who describe this incredible phenomena in terms that are easy for lay people to understand. And uh, what happened when I started discovering that dimension of existence, it's like it clicked perfectly into place with the experience of um, the synchronicities, the meaningful coincidences that were telling me that there was more going on. It became clear that there was a whole uh, dimension of our experience that was waiting to be revealed, but that we were only, or at least I was only beginning to sense into. And it made me so thirsty to know more. And that thirst and that excitement um, at just knowing that I was a part of this incredible experience of life made me feel so incredibly lucky to be here at all. It was clear to me that this was a gift, and a gift that I had to honor, and a gift that I um, had to revere. And I wanted to explore it as much and as deeply as I could, because it was so exciting. And now I'm going to pause, and I'm going to um, collect thoughts, maybe change a t shirt, and come back with another episode soon. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to continuing this with you.